Welcome to another author chat, a Merrill Moss Media production. I'm sitting here today with Joseph Cicio, author of Friends Bearing Gifts. It's a new book. Joe has an interesting history where he has a number of celebrity, well-known, old Hollywood, royal family friends, and his book is about the gifts that they've given him and the stories behind them and his relationships with them. So rather than talk, I'm going to let Joe sit here and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to connect with some of the people that you write about, like Prince Charles, there's Lauren Bacall, there's Nancy Reagan, and Bill Blass. Tell us about
I'm a very lucky guy. I'm just an Italian kid from Brooklyn that grew up in a totally dysfunctional Italian family and got lucky. I was a Benedictine monk for like 3 years, and when I came out of the monastery I didn't know what I was going to do, and a counselor advised me to, they thought I was creative and whatever, so they got me into a school that then got me into Lord & Taylor, New York, which was the beginning of an incredible life. And there was a woman there. In those days, the buyers were like gods in stores. They were so powerful. And this one buyer, her name was Cici Kempner, befriended me. She thought I was talented, and she would often ask me to come in and review handbag lines. And at one point, I had saved up a lot. I had saved up my money, and I was very young. I was like 22 or 23, and I wanted to go to Europe. I had never been to Europe, and I finally put together some money, and I ran down to Cici to tell her I had just booked a trip to Europe, and I was just, for 21 days, and this is the gospel truth, for 21 days, Paris, London, and Rome, hotel, airfare, and one meal a day was $460. That's it, which is, nobody ever believes that, but it's the truth. And I went down to Cici and just again so excited. I'm going to Europe, and she thought that was wonderful. And she was kind of stern, but a real teddy bear under it all. And she said, "Now let me teach you something. This is important." And I looked at her, and she said, "You're very talented, and you're going to have a wonderful career. I have no question about that. And the best part of that is you're going to travel all over the world, and somebody else is going to pay for it," which I thought was funny because I'd never been any place at that point. And she said, "You must promise me and promise yourself that every time you do travel, especially to Europe, you buy one beautiful thing." And the reason for that is someday, when you're as old as I am, and she was in her 60s at the time, she said, "I know you're going to have a beautiful home, but the important thing is that the home is going to be filled with beautiful things that are associated with friends. And even after some are long gone, you will be able to look at any one object and bring that friend back into your life and enjoy the memory and the love and cherish a memory of that person." And I thought that was an amazing lesson, and of course I did. And then with the book, friends for years would come to the house and say, "Oh, where did you get that? Oh, Joe, I love that." Or, "Joe, where did that, so unusual?" And everything has a story. And people have been saying to me for years, "You should write a book, you should write a book." And I wasn't about to write a book. And truly a clairvoyant I knew who was just wonderful, like almost 40 years ago. He always would tell you his timing is wrong, or his timing is off, but his predictions are accurate. He said, "You're going to write a book." And this is over 30 years ago, and I said, "Bertram, I'm not writing a book. I can't even write a thank you note. You're going to write a book." So Bertram was right. 30-something years, I wrote a book. But the book, the important part of the book is not the things as much as, for me, is the relationships and the people. And I take very, very serious value to relationships and people in my life, and I always have. They don't have to be famous. They don't have to be celebrity. I was just incredibly lucky that somehow through retailing, which is a very exciting industry, you became friends with people. And I would meet unbelievable people, but I would never, if I didn't connect with them, I don't care who they were.
Right.
It wasn't important to me that they were a major celebrity. I had to like them. And there had to be a connection. So obviously anybody in the book is very well connected. You know, we bonded, is that the right word?
Yeah.
But it really started with Cici, and in the book there's profiles of different people and the objects that either they gave me as gifts. Like there's a wonderful painting for Cici. Cici was a little on the tight side, so the fact that she spent money on a painting I was overwhelmed with. But like this crab was left to me in her will. This is Slim Keith, Lady Slim Keith, who was a very famous New York socialite who actually discovered Lauren Bacall.
Okay.
Because she was married to Howard Hawks, the director, who was a very famous director in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And one of his great movies was To Have and Have Not. If you've not seen it, you really should see it because it's quite incredible. And I'll give you a little secret. Number one, Slim Keith saw Betty on the cover of, I think it was Harper's Bazaar, and took the magazine to her husband, Howard Hawks, and said, you know what, you should look at this girl. She's got something. And now you fast forward whatever small period of time, and Slim, the way she told me the story is she was sitting in their Hollywood home reading, and Howard came home at lunch and he ran into the bedroom where she was reading, and he said, where's that little black and white check suit you bought the other day? And she said, well, it's hanging over there in the closet. Why? He said, I want to put it on that kid you told me to screen test. I think it might work on her. If you watch the movie To Have and Have Not, the little black and white, it's almost like this jacket, black and white check suit that Betty wears in the movie, almost all through the movie, that was Slim's actual suit. And if you really listen, Humphrey Bogart, because that was Betty's first movie.
Okay.
She was 18 years old when she did that movie. And when Bogart talks to her in the movie throughout, he refers to her as Slim. He doesn't call her by her screen name, which I don't remember what it was anymore, because he always says Slim, because she was tall and slim. And that's how I got to know Betty, you know, and we became great friends.
Wow. Well, you have some other really great pieces here that you've gotten over the years. So why don't you tell us a little bit about them? Start with this picture of Carol Channing.
Well, Carol is, I mean, she's an icon. She is so divine. And I'm trying to remember how I even met, I remember how I met Carol at a wedding luncheon in San Francisco. And I was lucky, I always admired her, but I didn't know her. And we were at this big wedding reception of a friend. And thank God Carol was seated right across from me. And there was like 10, 20 other people at this long table. But somehow we just clicked immediately. In fact, the other people were getting very annoyed because all we did was talk to each other. We almost don't remember. But we became great friends. And she's divine. She's a very, very good woman. She's hysterically funny. And she doesn't even know it, but she is. Now you fast forward, and again, we're friends for a long time at this point. And she came to New York one winter to do a David Letterman night show appearance, and she could be a little scattered sometimes, and she didn't have a coat, she didn't, dress properly, and she needed a coat. And I said, God, Carol. So I took her to a friend of mine who was a fashion designer, and I said, you've got to make her a coat right away, like in 2 days or something. And I went around to his fabric department, and he had this crazy fabric, and I said, this is divine, this is Carol, this is nuts. Yeah. And he was terrific, and he made a coat out of it. And then Carol wore it for a couple of days, and she was going on David Letterman, and I said, Carol, you have to wear that coat on camera. They got to see you in that coat, because it's really hysterical. And she did, and of course I watched it that night on the tube. And when she came out and they do all the applause and all that, and she goes past the desk and Letterman, she sits down and he says, "Why did you stop at Bed Bath and Beyond? Did you get bath mats to make that? Did you, so it was cute." But that's how Carol came to be, and she gave me that picture. Among other things, because she used to be, she's elderly now, so she doesn't get around much, and she lives in Palm Springs area. But she was just so much fun, and she taught my son how to eat when he was like 10, 11 years old, eat mussels, in white wine. And, I don't like mussels, but she and Christopher had the best time eating mussels, and, she loves stuff like that. And, it's just Carol, and the memory of her is so joyous. It really is.
And this
That is
an old cigarette case?
Yeah, that's an antique. I've never seen one like this that's lacy, because you could actually see right through it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like lace, and it's a sterling cigarette case. And Betty Bacall, Lauren Bacall, her close friends would call her Betty, and she was amazing. And I got to know her because of Slim.
Right.
And we had another very good mutual friend who's also in the book, Gene Hovis, who was this incredible personality and chef and whatever. And he came to work with me. I got him a job at Macy's, which was hysterical. And he was very close with Betty, and I knew Betty, and Betty loved donuts. She loved fresh donuts. So what we would do every couple of weeks is Gene would get in really early. I was normally in early at Macy's, and he'd have them make some fresh donuts and get 2 thermoses of coffee. And then we'd run over to the Dakota where Betty lived, in one of those incredible original apartments at the Dakota, which you need to, I used to tell Betty she should drop breadcrumbs or have a can of breadcrumbs at the front door so you could find your way back. It was so big. But we would go over with the coffee and the donuts, and Betty would answer the door. No makeup, the hair pulled back, a chenille bathrobe. It was not the glamour lady you would expect. And we'd go sit in the kitchen and have donuts and coffee and gossip about everybody we knew. It was fabulous. It was just so much fun. And people don't understand that, good people are good people. I don't care what their celebrity is. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
And again, I would only, I could only relate, I've met a lot of people who were prima donnas. I don't need that in my life. I want good people around me, and I always have. And Betty, people thought she was tough and whatever. She wasn't, but she did come off that way. But she was such a good, giving, loving human being, and we had so much fun together.
This is probably everybody's favorite part, the royals, and especially since we're
Today,
well, yeah, there's royal wedding, there's a new royal baby.
Isn't that fabulous?
I know. So
And
tell
I
us,
wasn't invited to the wedding, of course.
tell us about these pictures. You have this is a picture of Charles and Camilla, and then you have here. I'm going to set these up so our audience can
Every Christmas,
Christmas cards.
His Royal Highness and Camilla send me a Christmas card that they signed themselves. And he was very, very good friends with Joan Rivers, who I was very, very good friends, and that's a whole other book almost in itself.
Right.
And His Royal Highness had a food business called Duchy Original in the UK. It was a very impressive business, volume-wise as well. But he didn't like the way it was being run and whatever. And I, at that point, was doing a lot of merchandising and retail consulting. And they kept telling me, and John said, His Royal Highness wants to meet you. When are you going to London? He'll meet you, I said, well, if he wants to meet me in his business, tell him to send me a ticket. I'm not getting on, it's 2 different things, and I'll do it, absolutely. And the royals don't spend money so quickly. So they don't even know what money is. It's the truth, and it's funny. And finally, after, oh God, a good 2 years, I got a call that Prince Charles was very upset this morning with whatever meeting he was at on Duchy Original, and he said, get me Cicio. I need to have Cicio here. I want to meet him. I got to talk to him. So I get this call, would you come? And fine, and the tickets, the hotel, everything was all arranged and everything. And I went, and I'm very, very thorough, and I'm very good at doing my sort of due diligence. So I knew I was invited for tea on a Saturday at Highgrove, which is his country home, which I was a nervous wreck over. And but I got to London on Wednesday before, and I went to every retail store in London that I could get to that I knew carried Duchy Original as product. So I wanted to study it, because there's a science to understanding merchandising and retailing. And then finally the day came to meet His Royal Highness, and you get instructions before you meet a royal on, you don't shake their hand unless they offer their hand, you don't call them this, you call them that, whatever. And I thought, good Lord. And we get to Highgrove, and again, I really was very nervous. And honestly, I remember standing there at the front door thinking, I can't believe this Italian kid from Brooklyn is standing here at Highgrove. And a houseman comes to the door, very nice, and greets us and asks us to sit in this parlor. And His Royal Highness will be with you in short order. And I figured the prince is going to come walking in any minute. And no, like 10 minutes later, he came back and he said, if he would follow me, please, His Royal Highness is ready. And I thought, oh, this is better than television. And I got it. And what I loved about it is that we had to follow him so I could walk through the house and see more of the house. And that's what I was curious about. And it was nothing like I expected. It was just absolutely beautiful in the most English country way. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't grand, no gold leaf, nothing like that. It was just the quintessential English country home. But it was a Georgian house, and the front door runs directly opposite the back door. So that the houseman took us out there and took us to the door, and he opened the door. And there, standing Prince Charles, is a little, I guess you call it reflecting pool in the terrace, not much more than about 4 feet or so across. And he was standing there, and I can tell you every detail of his dress. And it was incredibly gracious. And he had his hand here, or this hand here, and he put out his hand just so that I knew it was all right. I could shake him, shake his hand. And I was so afraid of doing the wrong thing. And then he was very gracious, and he motioned over. There were 3, because we had a friend of ours, the gentleman that runs the Prince's Trust in the U.S. there, who had arranged everything. And His Royal Highness pointed over to, there were 3 wicker chairs and 2 wicker tables. And I'm very good on detail. I don't miss hardly anything. And he, and had, obviously it was set up for tea. And motioned for us to please sit down or whatever. And I noticed right away there was a tiny little table between those 2 chairs. It was 1 chair, 2 chairs, a little table, and then 2 tea tables. I saw a gray folder, and I saw my name on it. And it was, and I don't have such great eyesight from a distance, but it wasn't hard to miss. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is very CIA looking, and he immediately picked up the folder, and he said, Joe, and as he opened it, I could see that, plus other things, there were like color photographs of newspaper articles or magazine articles of my different homes that have been photographed over the years. So he said, Joe, I must tell you, your home is absolutely beautiful. I could live there. I swear to you, I was like, I couldn't believe he was saying that. And I said whatever I said. And then we started to talk, and we had a 45-minute appointment for tea. He served the tea himself. There was nobody hovering over you or whatever. He could not have been more gracious, but we actually were together an hour and a half because he was enjoying it. Certainly I was enjoying it. He could not have been more gracious. And we talked about the business, we talked about merchandising, we talked about retailing, we talked about product. and presentation. Thank God I had gone through all the stores so I could tell them what I thought was good and what I thought was opportunity,
Right.
so forth and so on. And then when we were getting up to leave, again, he extended his hand to thank me. Oh no, yeah, I guess when we were standing there, he said, Joe, would you really do this for us? Would you do this? And what he wanted was a feasibility study done in the United States for his brand Dutchy Original.
Okay.
So he said, Joe, would you do this? Would you do this for us? And I looked at him and I said, sir, because at that point I knew he had a very good sense of humor.
Right.
I said, sir, I will tell you, after the time spent with you this afternoon, I would weed your garden, whatever you want. And he, of course, he laughed.
Right.
And then we left, and the minute we got out, the door closed behind us, I said to Robert, our friend, I said, I'm telling you one thing, this man has the worst press agent in the world. This man is divine. He's intelligent. He is very sincere about sustainability of the planet, and he was on that way before it became fashionable. He's got a very good sense of humor. He's very caring. He's nothing like I expected. I just didn't expect any of that. And so then it went on, and I'm very, very quick and very thorough. And I got into it. I got some incredible people to join our team to do this feasibility study, because it's certainly not a one-man effort. And of course, they were all experts. And it wasn't so, when you're saying for Prince Charles, that helps a lot, and whatever. And but he would call. He was very involved, and he would write letters all the time. He's not an email computer person.
Old school,
He's got, I don't know how many, like 3 or 4 or 5 secretaries everybody was lovely they all operate out of St. James Palace. But he would send me letters all the time, which I could never read. I've never seen handwriting like that in my life, and mine's pretty bad. But what was great is that he had an office in Washington, so I would fax it to them, and they would write it so that I could understand it. They'd type it out, and it was interpret whatever the heck he said, because I couldn't read almost a word. But then he would call. The phone would ring on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, and Joe, am I calling at a bad time? And I'm like, holy smokes, it's the Prince of Wales on the phone in my house in Connecticut. And then he would invite me to different events. They would have different events in the UK that for the Prince's Trust, because he has this incredible foundation, which most people don't really know about, that raises millions and millions of dollars for the world's poor all over the world.
Right.
It has nothing to do with London. And he would, he funded building little villages and communities and houses and orphanages, and he's just an incredibly giving, kind human being. And again, he'd write and everything. But to go to these dinners was, to me, to go into Buckingham Palace. You don't go from Brooklyn to Buckingham Palace, and I can't tell you, I just couldn't believe my eyes, when I was walking there, or go to Highgrove to dinner and sit next to Camilla, who is lovely as could be to talk to, and everything. It's one of the great experiences of my life. It really was phenomenal, and it really is all to Joan Rivers, who was a whole other thing in herself.
Well, in addition to the celebrities and the royals, I also was very fascinated by the pictures of you and the different politicians. The picture of you with Vanessa Williams when she was still Miss America, and Nancy Reagan, and then the Kissingers. Can you tell us a story about you and the Kissingers?
Nancy Kissinger wrote the foreword for the book.
Okay.
And they're very, very dear friends, and they're also quite incredible. And again, I've learned over the years, I don't believe anything anymore that I get through the media. I have to have firsthand, contact, because everything is distorted. These are incredible people. I'm very lucky, number one, at Macy's, our chairman had appointed Henry Kissinger to the board of directors of R.H. Macy's at the time. So he would come into the store and everything, and then you have little cocktail parties or whatever, and he'd be there or whatever. And then, by coincidence, number one, the chairman had a house, weekend house, in Connecticut, not far from mine. So I was over there all the time for dinner, and he'd host dinners every once in a while. And Henry and Nancy have a home very nearby, and different people at the time, like Bill Blass and Oscar de la Renta, and I mean, it all sounds very grand. It really isn't. It's just these are names you know. Nancy and I and Henry had a great friend in New York in the name of Molly Parnas. And I don't know that you would know Molly Parnas, but Molly Parnas was a very famous fashion designer and hysterical because she was self-made. And I love people that are self-made, that came from nothing. And I could tell you stories all day about Molly. But one day Molly said to me, you should know Nancy Kissinger. And I said, okay. I said, I see her at functions and things, but I'm not going to go up to her and, whatever. Well, you two would like each other. And okay. And just so happened, Finkelstein was having a dinner party at his house in Connecticut, and the Kissingers were there, and I was invited. And now it's cocktails, and Nancy was there, and she always looked so incredible. And very attractive woman, but also very lean, and that gorgeous hair and whatever. And I went up to her and I said, we have a mutual friend, Molly Parnas, and Molly said I should say hello or something like that. I don't think I said we should be friends, but we started talking and we realized that we had a lot in common, and that started the friendship. And we became great friends. And I called, I talked to Nancy especially all the time, a couple of times a week. And Bill Blass lived there too, and he had a home there. And I called Nancy when I was doing the book, and I thought, oh God, could I ask her to write the foreword to the book? So I called her, and I was very sheepish about it and whatever, and she said, yeah, I should do it. Yeah.
Well, the book is called Friends Bearing Gifts. And here's the cover again. It's almost like a coffee table book. It's very beautiful, very stunning pictures. I'm going to show you just some of the photography in the book. It's just gorgeous. And it's a great read, especially if you're someone like me. Like I collect things. I'm a collector of things, of music memorabilia.
Music.
Yeah, and I tend to get them from people who actually worked in the business, and they're gifts like this, and they have stories behind them. So I loved this book. Joseph Cicio, thank you for sitting with us, and I wish you all the best in the book. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
I think they're certainly through Pointed Leaf Press has the contact. I think on the website of the book, and Jonathan Motter, the publicist that's handling it, I'm easily got to, or get to, whatever the right way you say it.
We'll put that up on the website.
Yeah, but I don't remember now, because I'm not the most technology human being in the world.
But you are a great storyteller.
I'm a great storyteller, I've learned. And I love to tell stories as long as I love the story.
That's the most important part.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was fun. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.